Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. The Knife Raven here, back again with another video. And in today's video, I'll be taking a look at a review that is quite overdue. And that is of this knife. Well, this is the box. This is the Maserin Consoli. And I actually got this for Christmas. I've been wanting it for quite some time, and my family was kind enough to gift it to me. And I figured I'd do a review on it, but there's a reason it took me so long. And I will explain that in the video, but to start, here's the box. Maserin Coltellerie Sportive in Maniago dal 1960. So they've been making sports knives in Maniago, Italy since the 60s. It says here, Prodotto Italiano. This is indeed made in Italy. There's their information if you want to contact them. Yeah, very simple box. Inside is a little warranty card, which you can read if you wish. And of course, they also have it in Italian. And yeah, so you get that. And of course, you get a nice hand-stitched leather Maserin sheath, which is indeed made in Italy. So very nice. You get quite a simple collection of things with your purchase, but the main attraction is this. This is the Consoli. Now, I'm not entirely sure what Consoli means in Italian, but this knife has been around for quite some time, and I've been very interested in getting it. And part of the reason was because it was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. It was a very strange shape and very odd construction, and I just couldn't keep passing it up. Part of the reason I liked it so much is it's very similar to one of my, still, even today, favorite Italian knives, the Lion Steel Opera. Both are lockback knives with fairly similar price ranges. The Opera is a bit cheaper. Both feature a steel kind of in the same ballpark of quality and a similar blade shape. Now, of course, there are differences here, but I'll get to those in a bit. In the meantime, let's start out with the blade. We have a drop point design with N690 steel, and N690, as I've stated before, is certainly not what many would consider premium, but it is not bad. So it's a good mid-range steel for a traditional folding knife. And of course, you have your hollow grind, Maserin Consoli, stainless steel, N690 Italy, with their logo. Very sharp tip. The edge is razor sharp out of the box. And for reasons that you will understand soon, I haven't used this knife, so this is still the pure factory edge. And another thing that really enticed me with this knife was the handle. They offer many different handles, but this one is green Briar Burlwood. And I really like Burlwood. It's beautiful, in my opinion. I think it's one of the more underrated handle options for a lot of knives. And you can see the green Briar Burl has a very complex grain pattern. On either side, you can see the very different. Held in by 3 flathead screws. Stainless steel liners, stainless steel back spring and spacer. Centering is a little off to the right, but is otherwise very close to perfect. Gapping on this knife is non-existent. If you hold it up to the light, nothing shines through. Very well done. The only bit of gapping I can see is right here, where there's a little bit of a gap between the handle and the liner. But aside from that, there's no gapping on this knife. So very well made for the cost. I got this for $175. Well, that's how much it did cost to have it gifted to me, but $175 Canadian is not cheap by any means, but it's not a custom knife. However, I'd say it's certainly in the premium price range. Far more than the Opera, way more than an Opinel or an Arthur Wright. But the blade opens with a pinch. You can't really use any other means of opening. There's no nail nick, no flipper tab, just a good old pinch open blade, just like the Opera. You can see there's no mechanism here. It's just a simple opening of the blade requiring 2 hands. Now, I'm sure you've already seen this, but one of the things that did really entice me, aside from the handle, was the file work here, aka guillochage. And I must say, this pattern is unlike anything I've ever seen. It seems very machine-like, and for some reason the center part almost makes me think of tank treads. And it's beautiful in its own way. It's certainly not my favorite file work pattern ever, but one thing that's very unique is, aside from continuing through the spring and up onto the blade, the entire liners on both sides have that same file work, which is extremely uncommon. That's something you only see in high-price custom knives. So I will admit, this is a very special feature you almost never see. Here are some other comparisons for file work around the world. Here we have a French knife. This one I haven't shown in many of my videos, which I should probably fix. This is a Thiers Izard Le Tonneau, and you can see this has a fairly different pattern overall. You can see it continues onto the very top of the blade, whereas the Consoli does not. So you have some differences there. We, of course, have the British file work, which is featured on this Taylor's Eyewitness Barlow, which you can see is far more simple. It's just the back spring, and it then continues a little onto the blade and stops. Nothing to do with the liners, nothing on the inside. Just a very simple bit of very well done, admittedly, file work. But you can see 3 different countries, 3 different styles. Again, all 3 are very artistically done. All 3 are beautiful in their own way. But I must attest that if I had to choose a favorite, I'd actually have to go with the Eyewitness, because its simplicity does not rob it of anything, but at the same time it's an extra embellishment that makes it far nicer than, say, a plain back spring on an Arthur Wright Barlow. So this would still be my favorite for the guillochage, but nonetheless, it's always nice to see a new style. So the fit and finish is overall very good. You know, no blade play, no real gapping, transitions are okay. Blade centering is almost perfect, grind is very nice, stamp is great. Now, there are some problems with this knife, which I will get into now. Starting with the back lock, or I should say the spring in this tense. The back lock would be here. I don't know if you can see that right here, but the blade and a little bit of the lock stick up. Now, I'm not going to label this a flaw. Why? Because I'm not sure, based on the geometry of the handle, if this is actually just part of the design. And if it is, then this isn't a flaw. However, if it is, then that's a pretty fair bit of blade sticking up. But my guess is, I'm pointing it out in case it is an actual flaw, but my guess is that's just part of the design, and at the very end you can see it kind of is a bit higher than the handle, which is perfectly acceptable if it's just part of the design. But I figured I should point that out anyway. Now, the other flaws, one of which is a little bit of blade wrap issue. You probably can't see it because I've been very careful with the knife. Oh, hello, Alice. There's no real stop pin at the front. There's only one right here. And while it does do a good job of keeping most of the edge preserved, because it curves up here, there is a slight chance that the very front of your edge might tap against the lock bar. And because of that, it is possible to get blade wrap, but I kind of think it would be fairly difficult because as long as you're careful and there is a stop pin, if you just do that and walk the blade down even just halfway, it shouldn't have any blade wrap issues. But I have heard that if you snap the knife closed, for example, like this, you put a fair bit of force into closing it, you can get issues with that. But I haven't personally experienced any. I thought there was a little bit at the very front, but again, I can't really notice it, so maybe if I hold it from that angle, you can see there's a little bit of irregularity right there. So I guess, yeah, you can get blade wrap on these, which is unfortunate, but it is part of the kind of odd design of having this little groove here, which, by the way, for a medium-sized hand is very, very comfortable. Although I could see if you have a smaller hand, this kind of feeling like too large of a handle, and if you have larger hands, then this would be uncomfortable because one finger would be protruding onto the blade. So this is a bit of a niche handle size, but that's aside from the point. Now, time to discuss the one flaw that truly is a flaw, without a doubt. Because blade wrap can happen on any knife. It's up to the owner to be responsible and close the edge safely. That I don't consider a huge problem. This sitting up a little high, that could be part of the design, and even if it's not a big deal. I'm not bothered by that. Also, the transition from the spring to the blade is perfect. What am I bothered by on this knife? You've probably already seen it. That, right there. That is a very large crack in the center of the scale. Now, it did come this way. I do have a crack, funny enough, more reasons are similar, on my opera here, but this was done due to my own fault. You can see there's a tiny bit of a crack there. I was trying to tighten these screws. I wanted to edit the pivot area on the blade, and when I was doing so, I was tightening the pivot screw. When I put the handles back on and tightened this screw right here, I over-tightened it, and because of that, it formed a little crack. Now, I was quite upset with this, but compared to the Consoli, which has a crack running almost to the other end of the handle, this is not a problem anymore. It just goes to show what perspective you're looking at, because I'm not bothered by that really anymore, even though I should. But you can see that is a huge crack, and you can feel it. You could stick a nail in it. That is just, it's kind of unacceptable. Now, I could understand if it had gotten damaged in shipping. Yes, that's possible, because it had to go from Italy to Canada. I bought this at Warriors and Wonders again. So yes, Canadian knife store, Italian knife. There could have been something that happened on the way. But what I can't really excuse so easily is the fact that, well, first of all, what went wrong in the shipping, if that is what happened? It seems like it wasn't packaged very well, if it could easily crack. And if this wasn't something that happened based on shipping, then I must stress that they need to improve their quality control managing, because this is unacceptable. Now, I shouldn't be too critical. Why? I did send them a message almost immediately after this flaw was discovered, which was, after Christmas, and I did give it a couple weeks, or pardon me, about a week, just to make sure holidays were over and the factory would be open. But as soon as I could, I sent them a message about it. And they replied very swiftly, very friendly customer service, and they offered to send me some replacement handles, which I preferred as to having to pay to send it back to them so that they could replace them. So it took them a while, but for free, again, I'd like to stress that, they sent me replacement handles. Now you're probably wondering, why am I doing the review with the cracked handle? Well, this is a problem I have. I would like to say before I show these handles, I am immensely grateful to them that they had the courtesy to send me, completely without charge, replacements. But the one thing that's preventing me from using them, they kind of changed the knife's overall aesthetic. These are the replacements. Now, I might just be picky, and I am, I acknowledge it. But I bought this for the burl, clearly. The replacements don't really have any of that. And you can see they're also a much deeper shade of green. And they are beautiful in their own right, but it's one of those difficult choices because it will change the style of the knife, whether I want it or not. As you can see, very different look overall. And again, these are really well done. There are no cracks whatsoever on these replacements. And the screws were included, so I can simply take a flathead screwdriver, remove these three, take off the handles, put the replacements on, and replace them with the brand new screws. Problem solved. No crack, and aside from that, the knife is practically perfect. There are just some very minuscule flaws. The reason I haven't is just because, again, I really like the shade of these handles, and changing them would change the overall look of the knife. And while I know that might just seem very picky of me, which it is, again, I'm still questioning whether I should. I'm keeping the handles in case anything ever happens to these, but I'm still not sure I really want to replace them yet. Also, my track record with replacing handles has been poor, to say the least. As with my opera here, I'm afraid that if I replace them, I might crack them as well. And guess what? Lucky me, I have two cracked knives, which is quite a shame. And yeah, so I think I will go through with it and I will change the handles, but I just figured I should mention that yes, I doubt this is a common thing, but I really hope that that is just a one-time flaw, because you can see there is a very, very noticeable crack there. It runs all the way to pretty much the other side. So, again, I really like this knife for its style. It's unique, it's pretty, it features nice materials. It looks like a stunning knife. This looks like a custom knife with the presumably machine done, but also possibly hand done file work, the beautiful briar wood, and just the elegant style with the pouch. It's a wonderful knife, and I really am happy to have it in my collection. It's also my first Maserin. But I don't know. The whole thing with the handles, it's unfortunate because when you've got a knife that is heavily reliant on the style of the materials, it's a little unfortunate when said materials have, well, setbacks and flaws. So for that reason, it's just a little tough. But maybe I will switch out with these new ones and do an update just to kind of show off what the knife will look like when it is no longer cracked. But again, very nice knife overall. I'm still pretty happy with it. aside from the problems. And again, great customer service. They did send me the replacements. They responded quickly, very friendly, very kind, very generous. And I still think I'll be buying another Maserin in the future. Maybe not immediately. I still want to have enough time with this knife to see how it holds up. Generally, when I buy from a company, I try to at least give it a few weeks or a few months. A few weeks is if I really like the knife. A few months is if it's just most knives. To see if I actually like the knife and like the brand. And if I enjoy them enough, I might go ahead and pull the trigger on a second or third. But yeah, you probably won't see another Maserin immediately, but I've been looking into the Gourmet or the Colt with the bone handle. So perhaps in the future, you'll see another Maserin here. But in the meantime, yeah, this is the Maserin Consoli. Also, I figured I should showcase the Opera and its sheath next to the Maserin Consoli. So, Lion Steel Opera, Maserin Consoli. But yeah, I still quite like this knife, and I'm hoping that I will finally come to a decision when it comes to the handles. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching. This has been the Maserin Consoli in green Briar Burlwood, and this is the Knife Raven. As always, signing off. Goodbye.